dyscalculia it's a little reminder. Okay. So, first is what is one misconception about dyscalculia that frustrates you the most?
Oh gosh, there are so many. That
Right?
would be that's a hard one to pin down. I probably the one that aggravates me the most is when teachers and parents say, you're very smart, so you just need to try a little bit harder. And that drives me crazy because we know enough in the research on dyscalculia to know it is never related to low intelligence or low effort. And that's very damaging to a student's self-esteem and self-worth. They know they're already working harder than their peers.
I completely agree. As somebody with dyscalculia, that's something that I faced a lot in school, and
Yeah.
it definitely did damage my self-esteem. So, what has been the biggest breakthrough in dyscalculia research over the past few years?
Oh, that is a good one. If I can take a moment for dyscalculia research, we've been researching this since the 1930s, exactly the same as dyslexia. Reading had a much better marketing team back in the day and took popularity and therefore has a lot more research. However, in the last decade or so, dyscalculia has gotten a lot of research. So we do know a lot more now, and there are some very exciting things coming out. Um, Probably. My two favorite current research studies, one is by Dr. Michelle Mazzocco in Minnesota, and she focused a research study on what she calls the half fraction advantage. And in a nutshell, her research showed that people with dyscalculia tend to get the same kind of advantage in recognizing one half about 2 years after their peers do. So we just have a little bit of a lag, so by the time we get into high school, college, and adulthood, people with dyscalculia are completely caught up. But when we're grading in elementary and middle school, we are not anticipating and therefore supporting that lag. And I think that is where grading creates a real barrier for students. If we have a little more awareness, rely on the procedural fluency, rely on how to do the work, and let the conceptual understanding come on its own, then we could really better support our students. And my second favorite, really exciting current research study was done by Dr. Katie Lewis in Washington State. And she actually did a case study with a college student of hers who was studying, majoring in statistics, and has dyscalculia. And spoiler alert, she got her degree and did finish. But within that case study, she really had her student describe what she had done to get through the K-12 system. And there were a few best strategies, but for me, the most important one she used was having to write all of her own notes. And I do find that's an interesting piece for neurodivergence. Our traditional method of writing notes, especially in math class, is not very effective because within a few hours or a few days, the person looks back and says, what language is this in? I don't even know what this means, and I wrote it down. So, changing those notes to be a little more of a narrative with your future self is much more helpful for most students, and that can be tricky for the student and the teacher to learn. It's trial and error. We've got to give kids room to practice it, figure out which parts work, and keep that and tweak the parts that didn't, but let their notes be more of a living document and a dialogue with themselves.
All right. Do you think that dyscalculia is becoming more recognized, or do you think we still have a long way to go?
So long to go. Such a long way, but we are trending. So we're still a little bit of the redheaded stepchild of specific learning disorders, but we are picking up steam. And my big message to teachers and parents is that it's not trending because it's a brand new word. It's not a brand new education term. It's just that we have a brand new awareness. So I really encourage my fellow educators to dig into their PD and get some good training. There's a lot out there and find out more about dyscalculia so that we can go where we need to go.
Hmm. I'd say a lot in my initiative. People always ask me, like, how do you raise awareness for this to educators without adding another thing on their plate? And I found that the best thing I could do was just introducing it in a quick presentation so that if they're interested, they can do more research on their own.
Hmm.
But it is tricky because it's like we don't want to overwhelm our educators, but at the same time, it is really important to know about.
I agree. And I have 20 plus years experience as a classroom educator, classroom teacher, and private tutor. So my initial message to my colleagues is that it's so easy to help students with dyscalculia. It's one of the
Yes,
easiest things you're going to do. We're really just going to amp up a lot of what you're already doing and make small tweaks. You don't need a brand new program. You don't need a brand new curriculum. We're not going to put a bunch of new work on your plate. It's very
yes.
simple.
I always say a little understanding goes a long way.
Yes.
So, why do you think dyslexia gained so much awareness while dyscalculia remains relatively unknown?
I find that to be a really interesting question. There are two main things that happened back in the 1930s and 1940s when this research was first being done. Both of them started really in neuroscience. And then dyscalculia went into psychology and then educational research. The reading focus on dyslexia happened in neuroscience and then a little more right into the education sphere through two uh, doctors, Doctors Orden and Dr. Gillingham, which is where we get our Orden-Gillingham method. But at the time, there were two prevalent things happening. One was political. There was just that very beginning of the space race and our propaganda kind of not the Cold War, but a Cold War going on with the USSR. So there was a lot of propaganda at the time that said things like, little Ivan can read, can little Johnny? So that brought some of the popular opinion into, oh my gosh, we have to have a better educational system and we need stronger readers than our international competitors. And the second thing that happened, which we're still getting rid of, is the idea that you are either inherently good at math or inherently bad at math, and that it is tied to your effort. If you want to get better at math, you just have to practice. And you're going to practice more if you're a girl or if you're not Asian. That was a lot of the bias that came with math education. Now we know all of that is completely wrong and has nothing to do with math identity, but it is still taking a while. And a lot of our teachers are still holding on to some of those old biases.
Completely agree. I've also seen some things where it's like if you're left-handed or right-handed, that means you're using the opposite side of your brain, so that could play into effect. But you know,
Right. The brain can do a lot more
yes,
than that.
yes, it's much more complex than that.
Yes.
But um, what is one fact about dyscalculia that surprises most people?
Ooh, that is a good question. Sometimes I feel like the whole thing is going to be a surprise, but I think what I find, I, I might use resistance more than surprise. This is where I see a lot of resistance. Um, for most people with dyscalculia, the parietal lobe right about here loses math information over time. So those basic facts don't really stick, which is why you can memorize, you can learn the songs, you can read the books, you can play the flashcard games, and you're not really moving the needle, um, which is very easy to support. Use a 1 to 100s chart, use a multiplication list, the old-fashioned times tables, not the chart, and then use a calculator. That way, the numeracy piece is not in the way of the rest of the work that needs to be done. But I will have teachers and parents go through the training, be with me for the conversation, and then come back and say, okay, great. I'm trying to increase fluency. So how do I get these math facts to stick? And I go, oh my gosh, I'm pretty sure we just said that, folks. It's like putting water in a colander. Some of it is going to leak out through the holes in the colander. Support the colander differently, but don't expect the memorization piece to look the same.
What are some meaningful ways communities can increase awareness, do you think?
Well, I would love for more people to talk about it, and you can say dyscalculia. That's gaining a lot of popularity in the US, going back to sort of the Latin roots of the word. You can say dyscalculia, especially if you're in the UK or Ireland or Australia. Most people get halfway through and drop the word, hoping you'll pick it up and say the rest of it. I don't care how we say it, as long as we're talking about it. Pretty much anyone you stop on the street and ask, have you heard of dyslexia? They're going to say yes. We need to keep talking about dyscalculia until we get the same response.
Yes, I recently went to a classroom and I was just like, has anybody heard of dyscalculia? No hands. What about dyslexia? Everybody raised their hand. And I was like, well, it's very similar. I The best way for me to describe it so that younger people can understand is it's very much like dyslexia, but instead of reading and writing, it's numbers. So let's see. What advice would you give a teacher who suspects a student has dyscalculia?
That is an excellent question. If you are a teacher, we are at the front lines of recognizing learning differences. A lot of times we hold off on moving students into a screener or identification process until third or fourth grade because we are waiting for regular developmental lags to catch up. But we can spot dyscalculia even in early childhood. So if you're noticing that a student should be doing better in math than they are, if you notice that they're having trouble with number sense, it's not really clicking in the same way, time, money, and place value are a constant struggle. And if you're seeing issues with subitizing, looking at a group of dots and knowing how many there are without counting from one every time. If you're seeing those indicators, talk to your child find team. Start writing down some notes. Track your own data. There are some free screeners online in the US. My favorite is probably disctest.com. I did not create it. I'm not affiliated with them, but I'm very impressed with what they do in that screener. You can do some informal screening as well, using some of the indicators I mentioned. Talk to your guidance counselors, talk to your child find team, get into that data tracking process, which we need before we can really recommend further testing. But we have to know exactly what's going on so that we are effectively treating the problem.
And also for parents, I recently had a parent come to me and say, my students' teachers aren't really catching on to the fact that they are doing so bad in math, but so well in reading and writing. What can I do to help them if I suspect they have dyscalculia? What would you say to them?
Parents, you have to keep advocating. Sometimes you're very lucky you get a parent who talks to a teacher and the teacher hears you, or they have some awareness. Um, Not enough. Typically, what happens is parents are fighting for years to get the right kind of services and identification and support. You cannot sleep on this for your child. Make sure that you dig into this. You can talk to the school psychologist if your school has one, or if your district has one. You can request that the child find team starts gathering data, um, and you can track data on your own. What are you seeing at home? How many hours of homework are you doing? How much frustration is there with these concepts, so that you have data to bring to the table? And that disctest.com, you could do something like that on your own and start getting data to bring to the table. Don't give up.
Yes, I agree. I wasn't diagnosed until my sophomore year of high school because all
Hmm.
those years nobody listened to my
Yeah,
mom. So it was extremely hard for me. And also because my parents, they never finished their education, they never made it past high school. So it was also like, I'm not even sure how to help you with
right.
this.
Hmm.
Yes. how can parents support a child with dyscalculia without creating anxiety around math, would you say?
That is a huge piece. We cannot sleep on mental health in this country. Hard stop. And we absolutely cannot ignore the mental health piece of having an undiagnosed learning disability. Um, that is a huge one. A large part of my work involves um, really trauma responsive teaching strategies because the math anxiety, anxiety in general, and that lower self-esteem, self-efficacy, and a lower definition of math identity is so prevalent. And the longer the issue goes undiagnosed and unsupported, the harder that is to change. Um, so a shout out if you are the person in the listening and those words are resonating with you, this problem is not from you. There's nothing wrong with your ability to do math or to learn, and there's nothing wrong with your ability to perform at your highest capabilities. Please do not take this as an internal thing that you carry with you. It is not part of your identity. Um, for parents, a large part of help is going to be that advocacy piece. um, Look for different resources and different either you probably don't want to read a lot of research articles, but I have a podcast. Other people have podcasts. We're starting to get information on social media and YouTube, so you can find us and we can help so that you know how to best support your student. So my last piece for parents is to dial back a little bit on the pressure. Just try to have some fun with your kids. It doesn't have to be 8 hours of flashcards and summer programs and fighting over homework. That should never happen. Enjoy your family time.
Yes, I think that everybody can agree that they've had moments in their education where you're all sitting at the kitchen table and it's rough. So
Yes.
that's a really nice thing to hear. And that concludes all my questions that I have for you.
Okay, excellent. I have some for you if you're ready.
Okay, perfect.
I am so excited to talk to you and to know that this is what you're doing. So, I would like a quick recap of who are you, Liliana, and what brings you here today? What was this journey?
So, my name is Liliana Ayala, and I recently won Miss Grace Harbor's Teen 2026. I decided this year that I didn't want to be embarrassed about my dyscalculia, and not many girls had the same community service initiative as me. A lot of people do things that are with their personal journey, and since dyscalculia is not very made aware of,
Yeah.
nobody has one about dyscalculia. So I thought I should be the first person going into classrooms and talking about this. And through that, I've made such a breakthrough in my community. I've told teachers who never knew about it in their 40 years of teaching about it.
Yeah.
And it's been great because I know that if I was a child, like, I really needed somebody like me advocating for me in my community.
That's excellent. And a little bit about your journey. I know you said you were a sophomore in high school before you really had a name to put on this. And I can imagine a lot of what your experience was before that, before people who are in that same situation, either elementary, middle, or still in high school looking to get help. What did that look like for you? And what was that journey like? How did you stay dedicated to making sure someone heard you?
For a long time, I just thought that I maybe was just not as intelligent, and I would go home to my mom and I would just say, I feel like I have dyslexia, but with math all the time. And we didn't have the language to know that I had dyscalculia. So a lot of what my mom did is try to advocate for me. And I did have a lot of teachers with that resistance. And they just told me, like, I needed to try harder. I'll never forget when I was a sophomore, I'm not sure if it was a state test, but it was something where she could see my math score. And she called me up in front of the whole class and was just like, your score is mirroring the score of a third grader. And I was like, that was me trying my hardest. So that
Right.
was kind of my experience throughout school the whole time. So it did give me a lack of trying. And it wasn't until my sophomore year that, like, we finally went to a, like, the school psychologist and was like, it's more than a lack of effort because I was trying my hardest. So that's what I really try to advocate for is students are trying their best, and if their best is not reflecting on those scores, then we need to look further into it.
I will say two things about that response, and thank you for sharing and self-identifying. One is that in all of my years in education, and I've worked with all sorts of different students, students with dyscalculia are far and away the hardest working group of students I've ever seen. The amount of effort and the deep desire to understand and to be able to do math well is high above any other population or group of students I've worked with. And I do want teachers and parents to know that. And my second quick piece is to let you know, in case you didn't, you probably do, standardized tests are just not written for neurodivergence. So a lot of that discrepancy that we see in test scores is because you're a fish being asked to ride a bicycle. It's not that there's something necessarily wrong with you. Nothing about those tests is designed to give you the right test situation.
Yes, it's I feel like they are just a snapshot of what the broad spectrum of learning is, and it's not even just for people with dyscalculia. I feel like it can go for anybody.
Yep.
They are just not very modern, and even now I face struggles with that. Like I'm going into college and I have to take the acuplacer, and I say like I have dyscalculia, but it's like you still need to take it as is, and that just says where you are, and it's like,
Yes, but it's
hey,
not saying where you are at
yes,
all. And that
yes.
higher ed piece, we could do a whole nother conversation around that. That part is exceptionally frustrating, which is one of the long-term issues for people with dyscalculia. It is still very much a barrier to high school graduation, a barrier to college placement, a barrier to going to the right college for you, and a barrier to getting the degree that you want. It should not be. Those are all systemic external barriers. And in higher ed, we have to do a better job.
Yes. And my goal has always to pursue nursing. And I've been asked a lot, like, why should patients trust you as a nurse if you struggle with numbers? And it's something that I used to think, and I was like, maybe they shouldn't. But after going so long and finally realizing what I have and having that extra validation of my diagnosis, I've realized like it's not me. Like they can
Mhm.
trust me.
Yep.
It's just a matter of how I learn, not a lack of trying or anything.
Absolutely. Nothing about dyscalculia should stop you from reaching your goals, especially that one. And the biggest thing you're going to bring with you into your nursing journey is the fact that because of your life experience so far, you have a lot more empathy and understanding for people who have a personal problem, in your case, mostly physical, when you're in nursing, that they're having a hard time explaining to others and getting anyone to hear them. So, you're going to be a great nurse. I'm really excited to know that's one of your future goals.
Thank you. I have always said that as well. I think it adds an extra layer of who I am. So now I'm not ashamed of my dyscalculia. I'm happy that it happened to me because I feel like I'm able to handle it in a way where I just make it a good thing about me. And with those experiences that once harmed me, I've made them into something where I can help other people with it.
Absolutely. And I recently discovered that I have dyscalculia, which shocked me. I've been studying this. I've been advocating for it. I've been training others in what it is. But a million years ago, if you had a problem in school, you had a problem. So no one talked about any of these terms ever. And so I knew all of the indicators and was not applying them to myself. And so it was fairly recent that I came to that understanding. And I thought, oh gosh, this makes so many things make sense. Even in my teaching, students would say, well, how come you can explain it and I get it? Don't other teachers say it that way? And I said, I have no idea. But now I know it's because I also think about math differently. Um, which can be very effective. And I do think my history in education, which was pretty traumatic too, and certainly never would have included doing math all day, every day as a career choice. That has really helped me connect with others who are earlier in the path of that same journey. But for anyone out there who is an older adult, uh, if this was just you were never good at math, you could never do it, no one in your family could do math, and you were just afraid of it now and don't want to talk about it, you might want to also look at finding out more about yourself as a learner because probably a learning difference and you never knew it. And that can really be empowering to learn later on. But there's a lot of adults who have no idea that this is why they've been struggling so long.
Yeah, definitely. I've met a lot of adults recently where it's like, I might have that. And it's like,
Right.
well, you should look into it even if you're still not in school. It's just validating to know that it was never you. It was never a you issue. It was the way your brain processes information. And that's simply what it is. It's nothing involving the way that you learn. It's just the way your brain processes things.
And that's different, not less. You're not less of a math person if you have dyscalculia. There's nothing that reduces your math abilities with this learning difference. All right, my
Yes.
last question. If people want to know more about you and follow your pageant journey, how can they do that?
So on Instagram and Facebook is just at Miss Grace Harbor's Teen. I'm actually leaving for Miss Washington's Teen tomorrow, so competition will
Oh,
be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and I'm super excited. The goal is to receive the title of Miss Washington's Teen and make it a statewide thing with my dyscalculia. So
well, that's fantastic. And I'm already following you on Instagram. So I will definitely be watching that journey. And, the Pacific Northwest is a gorgeous place. So if you need any help on your statewide awareness campaign, I'd be happy to come out. But I also hope we do some more of these discussions. I'm definitely going to be sharing it everywhere I can. There are a lot of people who need to see and hear your message.
yes, I completely agree. And I'm very thankful that you were able to sit down and have this conversation with me. I think that even just simply posting this online can bring a lot of help and support to so many people because we're talking about things that people have been scared to ask these type of questions for a long time. And I think that just having this information is already so much helpful.
I completely agree. Well, I know in theater we say break a leg. Is that the phrase in pageant work, or no, you don't want to say that before you're
We
wearing
don't want to
heels?
break a leg because it's very much possible. So,
hmm
yes.
Well, I hope you have a great time and really enjoy the ride. And I've got my fingers crossed for you
Thank
in this pageant.
Thank you. I'm so appreciative of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, I hope